now listening to a Purple Crayon Productions broadcast.
You're going on a road trip. You're not sure where it will take you, just that you need to take it. You woke up one morning and looked at the sky and felt the inexplicable need to drive. And so you drove, and now you're on an interstate, following the pull of the sun and the mountains and thinking it was far too easy to just walk away. But you did. And so you drive, and as you drive you wonder what strange things are lying ahead of you. When you wake up in Nevada, you're determined to travel south. You've seen the entire north of the country, and now you want to experience the exact opposite. You want to go deeper and deeper into the desert, for it to get warmer and warmer, for the land to become more and more red, to see cactuses and canyons. And so that's what you do. You leave Nevada, and for the first time in a while turn east, toward the sun as it rises in the sky, and toward a new highway, one that no longer exists in anything but the memories and imaginations of those who know about it. Route 66, established in 1926 to connect Chicago to Los Angeles, is called America's Mother Road. It was a two-lane road, originally just gravel and dirt, but representative of so much more. During the Dust Bowl and sandstorms of the 1930s, many residents of the Midwest had no choice but to take the highway, one of the first in the country, in what they saw as their only route of escape. For over 200,000 people, Route 66 and the Southwest represented freedom, opportunity, and new life. Migration west continued through World War II, and Route 66 became the primary vacation route for anyone going west. Tourists would pass the Grand Canyon and the Painted Desert, and small towns in the area thrived due to their proximity to the road. It marked the start of the fast food industry in the country, as well as the general American culture of road tripping. Roadside attractions such as neon-lit diners, curio shops, reptile farms, frozen custard stands, and themed motels existed all along the highway. But on most maps today, you won't find Route 66, and if you visit these diners and stands, you might not find them either. In the 1980s, after a long period of decline, Route 66 succumbed entirely to the new and improved interstate system. Now, Interstate 40 passes through New Mexico and Arizona, where Route 66 used to, away from the small towns. Shops and diners and gas stations still exist, some as crumbling remnants of what once was, some as businesses still holding on, despite being only ghosts of what they were in their heyday. And the road, decommissioned and mostly non-existent, is littered with legends and tales. Some of it now blends in with the interstate, some of it is communally designated a scenic byway, and some of it is just remnants of old roads blending in with the stone and sand of the area surrounding it. But it all holds immense allure for road trippers who want to relive the highway's heyday. So this is where you end up, passing a sign that says "Welcome to Arizona, the Grand Canyon State," and then another reading "Welcome to historic Route 66." The road becomes narrow and steep, making abrupt hairpin turns and following alongside the ground as it quickly rises in elevation. There are no rails, only a few wooden poles marking the edge of the road. Rocks and bushes form walls around you, and you realize you're in the mountains again. You see small cactuses hanging over the road, almost human-like. You look over the edge of the mountain and see what looks like a vast green forest, just dots blending into one another, and you realize these are cactuses as well, some of them as tall as trees. This is the Sitgreaves Pass, an original stretch of Route 66 that was once so dangerous that cars had to be pulled over by horses or other cars. In some areas, cars were directed to drive backwards. The road went through the pass only because of Oatman, a small town that still exists in the center of the Black Mountains. It began as a mining camp after prospectors struck gold in the area, and became so popular and so profitable that travelers didn't mind taking the hazardous mountain pass to visit. In its heyday, Oatman was the largest producer of gold in the country and supported over 10,000 people. In 1953, however, Route 66 was changed to bypass the mountains and instead twist through the safer, flatter land on the ground where yucca plants grow tall and railroad tracks run alongside cars. After this, it didn't take long for Oatman to be reduced to a ghost town, but today, it supports 100 people and tourists passing through the area, mainly running off of attractions for people wishing to experience its past success. Wild burros wander the streets, and costumed gunfighters give timed public performances. Old mine shafts are all around the area, peeking out of hills and through dirt. Much of the town is centered around the Oatman Hotel, built in 1902 to provide rooms to miners in the area. It initially achieved booming business, with Route 66 travelers filling the rooms once the mines closed down. According to hotel legend, Oatman also hosted some famous guests, most notably actors Clark Gable and Carole Lombard, who spent their wedding night there in 1939. They supposedly returned often for the peace and solitude of the area, and after Lombard died, Gable visited on his own, and apparently, the couple loved the hotel so much that they never truly left. Today, the hotel has no overnight visitors, but guests and staff have often heard a man and a woman whispering and laughing from the room Lombard and Gale always stayed in, even though it remains empty to this day. According to one report, when a professional photographer took a picture of the empty room, the ghostly figure of a man appeared on the developed print. On the second floor of the hotel, distinct outlines of sleeping bodies have been found in the dust on historic beds. You see the hotel as you pass through the town. It looks like it's made of pale yellow clay, with painted red windows and faded purple letters on a sign in front. Small wooden buildings stand next to it, looking as if they're slowly deteriorating. And in back, you see red rocks sitting above the rooftops. Behind them, storm clouds gather and turn the landscape a dark gray. You think a storm is coming. The rock formations around you grow as you approach Flagstaff, the nearest major town to the Grand Canyon. They're becoming a darker orange, almost red, and reaching higher into the dark sky. Flagstaff has its own share of haunted hotels, including the Arizona Hotel Monte Vista, which opened in 1927 and hosted famous guests such as John Wayne, Bing Crosby, and Harry Truman. All three reported mysterious knocks on doors with no human sources. Flagstaff is also home to the Museum Club, a Route 66 icon once called the largest log cabin in the world, then in the country, then just in Arizona. It contains the lifetime collection of taxidermist Dean Eldridge and includes 6-legged sheep, 2-headed calves, and over 30,000 other stuffed animals. Passers-by on Route 66 dubbed the collection the Zoo, and although its owner died after only 5 years of operation, it continued to exist as a recording studio, roadhouse, and now a bar and music venue hosting country musicians from the area. Virtually every owner of the zoo has died inside of it, and visitors still report seeing ghosts that resemble each of them, standing among visitors in wandering halls. On nights that it's closed, the zoo is also said to provide ghostly entertainment from resident spirit musicians, and although the power on the upstairs floor has been shut off, the lights frequently come on by themselves. And as the sky gets darker, you reach the building and see the second story becoming brighter and brighter. Still, the flashing open sign and Route 66 posters decorating the huge wooden building, almost like a camping lodge, make it seem welcoming. You go inside and get a drink as the storm hits. There are musicians, playing their guitars softly as people wander around the room. You hear them discussing the rain. It hasn't rained this much in years, one of them says. You sit off to the side, just watching the rain fall, turning the desert dark. It takes minutes, hours for the storm to end, and you feel like you're in the building until night has fallen. You see lightning crash through the window and hear banging on the roof. Finally, you hear the rain slow down and watch the outside become clearer until you can make out the tall rock formations and long road once more. You're only a few hours from the Grand Canyon, so as the rain slows, you drive there, your windows rolled down. It's dark but clear outside, some unknown hour in the middle of the night. The world smells fresh and new. There's nothing like the scent of outside after it's rained. You reach the Grand Canyon and stand at the edge of the railing, looking down and trying to find the bottom. When the sun rises, you take a deep breath and realize you've been standing still for hours, transfixed by the view. You walk out into the canyon as the sun continues to rise. Light reflects off the river down below. It's cold here, and mist floats to the top of the rocks, looking almost like snow. You take your time walking back up, stopping to take in each view as much as you can. And then you continue along the historic road, what would have been Route 66, but is now just earth. The red rocks reach higher. Some are long, cylindrical formations, almost like the fingers of giants buried in the ground. Some are larger rocks with their bases covered in deep green trees and jagged peaks of sandstone. Some are triangular, and some have rocks jutting out to the side. They are as tall as mountains, but less methodical. You can't understand what could have formed something like this. Like constellations, they all have names, reflecting their strange, massive shapes. Bell Rock, Coffee Pot Rock, Rabbit Ears, Cathedral, Mother and Child. You pass other ghost towns. Valentine is just a large red brick school building, surrounded by red rocks and a house labeled Bert's Country Dancing. The Jackrabbit Trading Post has huge jackrabbit statues, deep green roofs and cactuses painted on walls, and signs reading, "Here it is." Canyon Diablo is just a small cemetery. It was once located on the north end of the small Devil's Canyon. During its heyday, Canyon Diablo consisted mostly of shacks with two lines of buildings facing each other across the rocky road on the north side of the railroad. The street, often referred to as Hell Street, included 14 saloons, 10 gambling houses, 4 brothels, and 2 dance halls. It was known for its high crime rates and lawlessness, with many joking that most of its citizens lived in the cemetery. In the early 20th century, the town began to die as railroad tracks slowly covered up the canyon. When Route 66 was built in the area, another town, Two Guns, sprung up on the east rim of the canyon. You pass an old wooden sign reading, "Two Guns welcomes you," in faded white letters, sunlight shining through the holes in the wood. The town thrived during peak years of Route 66 popularity, and even once contained a small zoo for mountain lions and other desert animals. It now only consists of the remnants of buildings, walls, and bricks. You pass a gas station covered in graffiti and pale yellow dust. You decide to walk around, and you wander through the ruins standing alone by the road and deeper into the desert. The bases of houses made of red stone and shattered window frames, a wire gate sitting wide open inviting a visit, a chimney. The town, or what's left of it, sits silently looking over the canyon below, abandoned buildings whispering with the wind and memories of what once was. Further down historic Route 66 is the Meteor City Trading Post, an old tourist attraction that has enticed travelers for years. It was once just a lone gas station, a store, and a sign advertising the world's largest dream catcher. Several years in, its owners added a geodesic dome, and it exists there to this day, pale orange and white with black birds painted all across against the stark blue sky. The dream catcher sits next to it in a patch of particularly warm-colored sand, a large black net with a white hoop frame. In 2012, the owners of Meteor City tried to sell the dome and Dreamcatcher, but with no buyers, they left it to nature, animals, and vandals. It remained for the next few years, abandoned and deteriorating in the desert sun. Eventually, it was placed on a to-be-demolished list. But before it could be torn down, residents of the area collectively bought and cleaned the once popular landmark. Today, it stands frozen in time, like the ghost towns around it, serving as a memory for those who still think of Route 66. Just west of Meteor City is Meteor Crater Road. You take the road off of I-40 and drive south, on a 2-lane road cracked and covered slightly by the red earth surrounding it. It takes you to a large parking lot and then to the crater itself, 4,000 feet wide and 570 feet deep. It was formed about 50,000 years ago when an iron mass of over 60,000 tons entered the Earth's atmosphere and collided with the land. It sits in the desert today, much, much larger than the cars and buildings around it, much larger than you could have pictured in your head. Something about its size feels ancient. It makes you think of the time when everything was bigger for some strange reason, before humans as we know them existed. You walk around the exterior, looking inside and trying not to think about what would happen if something this big ever came back. During Route 66's heyday, an observatory was built just off the main road so that travelers could pay 25 cents to stand on the observation tower and see the crater through a telescope from miles away. Today, the observatory is just stone ruins, and you see them, crumbling into the ground, on your way back to the highway. You pass through more old trading posts and ghost towns as you drive further into the desert, filled with old wood signs advertising nothing, their words fading beneath the hot sun. Every mile you think you see another abandoned structure, a pale green Art Deco gas station, a huge pink light-up sign reading Rock Cafe, the Hackberry General Store with posters all along its walls and roadside artifacts piled in front, the Blue Swallow Motel. But the land around you is brilliant and colorful, and gradually signs begin to tell you that you've entered the painted desert. The rocks are the same red as before, but now they're lavender too, and a deeper color, maybe vermilion. You pass original sections of the old road, turn to gravel or dirt, and sometimes simply disappearing. Slowly, the ghost towns become more sparse. The yucca plants and cactuses grow in size, with the cactuses becoming greener and taller, looming like giants over the road. As the world becomes more and more vibrant, you see swirls and lines of different colors across rock formations, and structures that look like big sand castles sitting next to old, preserved pieces of wood. This is the petrified forest, sometimes called the rainbow forest. Colorful wood turned to stone among the wavy purple and red rock. It's the remnants of the large trees and rich vegetation of the area 200 million years ago, destroyed and preserved by volcanic lava and ash. The land looks whimsical, like illustrations from a children's book. For almost as long as the area has been designated a national park, people have been taking small pieces of petrified wood and experiencing strange, unlucky events afterwards. From divorce to medical issues to jail to unemployment to death, the park has received thousands of confessions, tales, and returned pieces of wood from people who lived to regret their actions. The wood is often accompanied with notes pleading with officials to return it to its rightful place. Unfortunately, once the wood is moved, it cannot be put back in the park due to the frequent scientific research occurring there. Because of this, the returned rocks and wood sit in piles at the southern entrance to the park. You pass them and wonder what the story is behind each one. The petrified forest has a museum that you visit after taking a while to wander through the trees. It discusses the mystery of the conscience wood and features a large piece of tree returned by a man who stole it 66 years ago. You see a large 3-ring binder next to the display, with paper sticking out, faded and crumpled over the years. You open it and flip to the last page, page 1200, dated back to 1935. The binder contains letters about the curse. One says, "I picked up this petrified rock about 13 years ago when I visited the park. I came across it today and decided I should send it back to you. I'm sorry that I took it and wish for you to have it back. Thank you. It's been bad luck to me." Another says, "I took the wood 10 years ago and nothing has gone right since then. If I'd known about the curse, I never would have done it. By the time it reaches you, things should be back to normal. If not, I give up. Forgive me for ever taking it. I want to start over." And a third reads, "When I was there, I read the letters of many people who had returned wood with tales of bad luck. At first, I couldn't believe it. I'm not superstitious, but you're right, there's a curse. Everything's going wrong. Here's your wood back." As you continue east, the swirls on the bluffs become a deeper and deeper purple until they're almost blue. And then, just as suddenly, they turn back to red, so red you think you feel the warmth radiating from them. They create arches and caverns, and then a single wall of tall, flat cliffs. Sitting at the base of the cliffs, the tallest you've seen yet, are wooden trading posts with bright yellow painted signs and bold red letters. Information, enter, welcome to New Mexico. Statues of deer, bears, and eagles peer down from the buildings, carved from wood and painted bright, faded colors. You realize you've crossed the entire state. The cliffs above the small buildings have rusty red stripes that look like they've been painted across. There's a curio shop with Coca-Cola signs and an old Model T sitting in front. The Mother Road continues to Gallup, a small town composed mostly of hotels. The land slowly becomes flatter and flatter, and you begin to pass signs by the road glowing green and black, reading Route 491, former 666. They lead to another highway, intersecting with I-40, running north to south. This is the sixth spur of old Route 66, giving it the former name Route 666 and an appropriate reputation. It's a tough highway to drive, with a high fatality rate and 400 sharp turns in a 60-mile stretch. Although safety measures in the area are constantly increasing, it's still deemed one of the most hazardous roads in the country. But along with these dangerous conditions, Route 666 drivers have reported being chased by packs of dogs, running at high speed and easily keeping up with their cars, and a mysterious black sedan speeding down the highway. The car often heads directly toward drivers, who pull over to avoid getting hit. Seconds later, the car, driving far faster than any others on the road, disappears without a trace. But you don't turn. You continue, eastbound, straight through New Mexico. It's nighttime when you hear the wind howling, whistling, almost creating a tune. It sounds a little like a human wailing, maybe even crying. You look for a person outside your car, but it's too dark to see. You hear it for miles, sometimes soft and mournful, sometimes loud, blending in with the rush of the wind on the highway. It follows you to Albuquerque, the next major town, with an old town of flat, clay-like buildings with white balconies and blue doors and walls the color of the sunset. You're comforted by the sudden presence of other people, the glow of life in this populated area, but you still hear the weeping, fading in and out, the most human thing you can sense at the moment. It grows louder as you pass the Westward Motel, with a tall, thin, glowing cactus and a bright green sign standing high over the road, and louder still as you approach a large ditch that runs through the town. This is the Arroyo, a long, dry creek used to drain water in the area. Its purpose is simple, but its history is complicated. It is said that the spirit of La Llorona, the weeping woman, walks along this ditch searching for her long-lost children. No one knows exactly where the legend began, but it's existed in the Southwest for centuries. The spirit is said to be beautiful, with long, flowing black hair and a white gown. She wanders by rivers and creeks, calling out for her two sons, who legends say she murdered by drowning. Legends also say that she regretted the murder immediately and mourned them day and night, roaming the riverbanks until she became a walking skeleton, a ghost of her former beauty. She eventually died by the river, and her restless spirit drifts along all bodies of water now, floating between trees or along the current. Children are told not to leave their houses at night, or she may see them and throw them to their own watery deaths. Deaths, or near-death experiences, of children via drowning are frequently blamed on the ghost, and there are many of these in the area. The howling is definitely a human's now. You hear distinct cries, far too realistic to be a trick of the wind. You drive faster, anxious to pass out of Albuquerque. You reach the foothills, which have trees and grass growing around them, things you realize you haven't seen in a long while. The weeping continues, softly, but you hear something louder, more haunting as well, echoing among the rocks and gaps between the hills. It happens every few seconds, blending in with the sounds of the night a little too much for you to fully distinguish it, but it sounds like loud, hollow footsteps, louder than any human steps could possibly be. As you drive closer, you hear a dragging noise too, like something long being pulled across the ground. Some Albuquerque locals tell of an old man who lived in a cave in the hills, who supposedly was responsible for any residents who went missing. A few have even reported seeing an apparition of the man walking, or a lantern swinging in the air, held by unseen hands. You look for any trace of light, but you see nothing. The dragging gets louder and more frequent as you drive closer, and then you hear a scream, sudden and sharp and not quite human, and then silence. Quickly, you drive away. You're on edge as you drive through the night, but by the time you reach Santa Fe, you feel a sense of calm wash over you. It's a relief to visit larger cities after only passing through ghost towns. It's a relief to know people are still alive and well. Santa Fe has its own set of legends. A headless horseman that rides down Alto Street to the river, black-robed figures appearing behind sandstone, invisible force fields that stop people from passing through old buildings, the oldest church still in usage in the country, with a bell that rings of its own accord. But there's something peaceful about the city and the tales surrounding it, tales that have stayed constant. Parts of the city date back to 1200, and it all feels so incredibly old. Stone and clay buildings still sit along the street today, with huge windows open to the elements, and small rooms stacked on top of one another, their walls ranging from brown to yellow to red. With your windows down, you think you can feel all the words and stories of people who have lived here, people who you don't know, but whose remnants can be found in the structures and sounds of the city. The city is a good match, you think, for the old highway, today only faded remains, but still alive with the remnants of the good old days. You don't think these stories will ever grow old, or will fade like roads and houses and cities do. You want to keep hearing them, to somehow, in some way, keep these places from completely crumbling into the dust around them. Your eyes are heavy. When you sleep tonight, you'll think of all of the people and things that you will give more life to when you tell them. You're ready to tell them. And tomorrow, you will drive more. Supernatural Road Trip is written by Catherine Horowitz. Information is from Wide Open Country, the LA Times, legendsofamerica.com, the Zoo Club official website, and the Meteor City Renovation Project. Music is by American Moon Bicycle, Fiel, Lobo Loco, and Sketchbook.
Cryptid Girl Summer!